fears. It's a very humane and natural thing to have. And what I learned as a fear was really weird when I first heard it from my friend. So we were talking, and he asked me, what is your biggest fear? Because he was bored. And I just told him that I was afraid of the dark, and that I didn't like spiders. But he told me a rather really complex answer, and it was really interesting. He told me he had agoraphobia, which is fear of forgetting or to be alone, to be lost. I never thought about that fear up until that time, but when I thought about it, it kept me awake at night. Because up until that time, I wasn't aware of that natural fear I had, just in case I got lost or be forgotten by anyone else. So what I thought, as the opposite of being forgotten forever, is that we can become immortal. We can always make people remember us. So I started with this research with that. Okay, so immortality has two definitions on its own. The first one is more of a physical immortality, which is the ability to live forever and eternal life. The second definition is more of a philosophical one, and the one actually many people try to achieve and are happily achieved. It is the quality of deserving to be remembered for a long time and being timeless. So while I was thinking of how to become immortal, I knew I had two options. I would either live forever, or I would make something so big that people would always remember me. I started with the easiest one, the one we always see in sci-fi movies or in scientific novels that we always see, that the adventurer goes on to freeze himself so that he can live forever. It is physical immortality, and it actually comes from a really simple instinct that we have, and it is the self-preserving instinct. We always want to make sure that the next generation have our genes, and to be reproduced because of that. We want to reproduce because we want people to see a part of ourselves. And there's this also common belief that more time equals more knowledge, so that how much we spend on here is actually meaning maybe more knowledge to learn or more knowledge to explore. But while researching, I found that quantity is not quality. So while I could spend 5 hours looking at a wall or 15 minutes looking at a book, I would spend more of a quality time reading while also spending less productive time while looking at a wall. So I started to think that preserving time is not the goal of physical immortality. And we have the fear of death, the inevitable but the unknown. We do not know what it is. And it is why we do not want to die. That's why people struggle in hospital beds, because they are so afraid. And while we are so afraid of it, we cling on to the lifetime we have because we do not know how much it is and how long will we live. So the relativity of it makes us actually think that not dying is so important. But people also do not want immortality. And the basic answer to that is probably the most emotional and the easiest one ever. It is because we know too little about death, and we don't want to see the beloved ones die. Imagine losing everyone that has witnessed once in your life, and that they knew you, they had a memory of you. They are all gone now, and probably no one could ever learn your name again. So that emotional bond we have with every human on this earth somehow is actually keeping us from not dying physically. And also, there's the risk of it as well. Think of the scars on your body or the marks. You got them in this short lifetime period you had, and imagine living forever. How many marks you would have, how many scars? You would probably look like a mess, and it would be so disastrous. Everyone would see you so old, or, well, we don't know if it would stay this way if we were to become immortal. So it would be really confusing for a lot of people, because humans may have evolved from thousands of years, but you would just look there like a normal human that was thousands of years ago. So when we ask people, do you want to live forever? Many of them say that they love life because they want to become immortal, or they hate death. So when we think of emotions, or when we think of our lifetime, we see it as a line. We think that we are born, we live, and we die. We see it as straightforward. However, neither our life nor our emotions are linear. They are all come in a circle. And the strongest the emotions are, the more closer they actually are. So when we say love and hate, they are not actually black and white. They actually mean something close, but the impact on them have different meanings behind them. So what I have here is Plutchik's wheel of emotions. So as you see, it is not linear. All of them are in a circle, and they're all somehow connected to it, starting from the most basic emotions, coming up to more complex ones. So when we look at where loving is, which is the blue part, when you look at the opposite of it, there is no hate. It is being scared. But when you look at the red part, then there is hatred. So the only thing they have in between is sadness. The definition of being a positive emotion and a negative emotion actually defines whether it's love or hate. It's why we always say that which people we hate the most, actually we love somehow the most. Because the attention we give when we love something and hate something is equal. So what I derive from here is that immortality is not just about loving something or hating life. It's about deciding whether you would want to live forever, to see recurring mistakes in history, or to make something forever yours. So while I was concluding my research upon human identity, I came upon this question. We are humans, and we all have things that make us humane. We have emotions. We tend to decide against our instincts, unlike animals. And we have a lifespan, which means we are not forever. So if our information were uploaded in a computer and were uploaded somewhere up into a computer, would the decisions we have taken at that time would be the same if we have seen it in a computer? Because without the emotion motive we have there, it actually means nothing more than a mere number of ones and zeros. But the moment that we decided to love something, or we decided to feel scared of something, is actually the time when we think we have to give that emotional importance to it. So if we were to become immortal and break our mortal boundaries, would it mean that our soul would become something that was no longer humane? Or if we were to become digitally immortal, would it make us human? Would we lose our identity, or would we keep it? Seeing that it was too risky, I turned my face upon the second definition, as we have stated. It is abstract immortality. And its main goal is basically cheating second death. It is what Egyptians name after like 75 years of your death, the last person on the earth that knows your name dies. So when you cheat that, you actually become immortal because people still keep knowing your name. Your name hasn't erased on this earth, and you are here still. So in the definition, we said deserving to be remembered for a long time. So how do people deserve it? How can we become immortal if there is a way, not physically, but more emotional or more in a human psychological way? So there are many examples in arts, like paintings, acts, plays, novels, written stuff, or painted, or made sculptures of. They make the artist immortal because even when they die, or even after their death, the emotional motive that they had behind the painting or the thing that they had created stays with the painting. People look at a painting and see which struggles it has gone through or why it was painted. And there's also mythology that people that didn't live on this earth even become immortal. Many mythologies cover people who have cheated gods or did something really strange, but we count them as immortal and count them as like they have lived on this earth because they did something that was really important and that had an emotional connection with humans. And there are also awards and scientific and mathematical studies which are more thing that we always occur in our daily lives or we see in TV. People are awarded with Grammys, Nobel Prizes, or Academy Awards because people say that you have done something so great, you deserve to be remembered. You have achieved no one could have ever achieved. Or think of it as the people who have created basics of maths are bound to be immortal because without them we couldn't do the simple multiplication or count how many things we had. So This means in order to become an abstract immortal, you have to defeat two things. One of them is the mortality paradox, and the second one is apathy. Mortality paradox is basically, imagine you're living forever now. You are in the year 3000. There are flying cars, Fifth World War is going on, and yeah, it's a mess, but you can still live there. Now, I want you to imagine the moment you died and after it. You cannot imagine after it because we cannot imagine further of our physical boundaries, and that is the moment that we take our last breath. And that is confusing because it is actually the core behind the fear of death. We cannot imagine something that we cannot see, we cannot know much of. And apathy is the opposite of empathy. So what that means is you have to have an audience that listens to you no matter what and would agree or disagree, but somehow have a connection with you. Even the worst leaders in history are immortal now, even the bad ones. And the reason behind it is that they had an audience that would rule, that would obey their rules no matter what. And they would always follow the leader that they chose as. Except for men, all creatures are immortal, for they are ignorant of death. I took this as the main obstacle behind being immortal. To become immortal, whether it's an abstract way or in a physical way, you first have to defeat the fear of death. You have to take the leap of faith that would leave death behind, and you would take the risk as, yes, I may be dying, but I'm leaving something behind that I'm sure people would remember, and people would always say that she has done something so great, I think I want to tell this to others, and thus create an audience, and in the end, somehow achieve immortality. And while it is still too hard for us to know that whether we can achieve physical immortality or not, this is the main goal of abstract immortality. We have to make sure we are not afraid of death. Because if we live around the idea of death, even though you may not fear it, you start to think of it. You start to always encircle your world around it, your life upon it. You don't go on an adventure because you're afraid of falling down a mountain. You don't do something because you fear of it or because you are too afraid of to do something. So you have to take risks. You have to think both negative and positive effects. But you have to say, I should do this because I want to be immortal. So being stubborn, I guess, is the key point of becoming immortal. Because when you think of gods or machines, they are ignorant of death because they are already immortal. So you have to leave the thought behind in order to become immortal. Then my teacher, while I was preparing, asked a really good question for me. He said, okay, your presentation is good, perfect, and you tell it good. However, you have to tell them what is immortality for you. And that really crashed me. I started to ask people, what do you think immortal is? Do you want physical immortality or abstract immortality? And I questioned hundreds of people. And they all had so many different answers, like I have covered in this presentation. They all had so many answers, and they were full of new ideas. But they didn't click on me. I thought I could have a different meaning of immortality for me. Because, yes, I obviously didn't want a physical immortality just yet because I'm so unsure of it. But is there like an easier way that I could understand how to become an abstract immortal? And at that moment, I remembered Iliad, the famous mythology, an immortal one that we remember as a history of time, and that is a good teacher for us in mythologies. In there, after his very good accomplishments, Achilles is told to choose eternal glory or eternal life. And Achilles thought upon a second because it was a hard decision, but then he said, I want eternal glory. He didn't want eternal life because he said, what if I were to live forever alone, but in a village? I had, yes, one achievement, but if it didn't continue any more victories, I wouldn't be here, and no one would remember me. I would just rot in a village, and I wouldn't be the Achilles, the glorious Achilles I am now. So he chose eternal glory because he said, Even though I may die one day, my body be decomposed, I will stay between the lips of people. People always will talk about me. People always remember me. And even though they may not remember my body, they might not remember the physical side of me, they will always remember what I did and what I fought for and I won for. So when I thought about my immortality, I took that as an example, an immortal mythologic person as an example. I want to make sure I want to be remembered. I want to make sure that the moments I cherish with people are also so important for them that they make me immortal, that they remember me, that they become some part of my life, and that the audience I have will make me immortal. So this was an immortal moment for me, to coming up here, to talking here, to something that I thought I would never have to do, and that I would never have a chance to do, is what I'm doing now. I think I'm becoming immortal for myself because I promised myself I would somehow make a TEDx speech, but I never thought I would have the opportunity. So I think I have become immortal now, and it is all thanks to you. So thank you for making me immortal.